Hello, hello. Welcome to the 16th episode of BINJ Live. Sorry, a little bit late, a little bit of technical weirdness with Restream before we got in, but all is well. And I'm Jason Pramas, Executive Director of BINJ. And here's Chris Faraone, co-host for the show. Say hello to the nice people, Chris. There we go.
That's me cleaning my glasses. If you hear the squeaky, 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 old man game. Got my stolen T-shirt on. Of course, for the bust that I got a note the other day. Hope you haven't given up on the bust. Props to that contributor. No, I have not. There's a couple other things going on in the world, and I know that's how everybody always looks. And for those who don't know, I'm of course talking about the stolen bus that I discovered years ago. It was stolen out of the Massachusetts State House, currently in storage at Los Angeles County Museum of Art. Such a significant situation that it is now a T-shirt.
Yep. I don't have one yet, but
well, of course, everybody will have one soon. This is the hot T-shirt, hot new BINJ gear. We'll get those. Is there anything else in the sleeve? I don't think so. Anyway, but so stolen from the what is it? Stolen from the Massachusetts State House, and that is Charles Brooks, early education reformer. Honestly, the reason that I've not had more stuff on the bust recently is because it's cold as hell out.
Yeah,
and
sure is.
And a lot of the stuff I want to do involves like going to the Brooks house up in Malden and at the State House and some projection stuff. You're going to see more projections. I know I did one. People seem to like that. So yeah. But other than that, how you doing over there?
Oh, me? Well, I mean, I was out to take the trash out earlier, but that's about it.
No shoveling for you?
Not for me. My landlord fortunately took care of that, so that was awesome. Yeah, I mean, it would be bad for me, for my neck and stuff, but otherwise I'm okay. We have someone else in the apartment with a cold, so I'm waiting to see if I'm going to be getting that. But otherwise I'm fine. And we got literally a million interns. We're moving on.
Anybody out there, keep reading BINJ, and we have just just put up an ARCS piece. It's nice to have kind of the blood flowing, and
we have a lot of new stuff coming in,
and it's like the way it's supposed to be. Like I'm working on a few things. We have a follow up to the opioid settlement project with John Gerhardson, along with some kind of interactive data stuff coming soon. But it's like that might be ready this week, but really, with all the snow, frankly, I spent half the day shoveling. So it's like, if that ends up next week, we got all these great interns, all this great stuff coming out. Got another piece coming up by Colin Harmer, who did the what is it? The parkour. I almost said parquet. The parkour piece,
the parquet,
which is a dope piece about we've always liked alternative sports.
Yep, sports.
At BINJ, so that was a dope one.
But I've been threatening to write about sumo for a long time. I probably should do that at some point, but we don't really have a sumo league that I'm aware of in the area.
You mean
I mean the real thing.
Not the people, not like big suits.
Everyone else is watching the Pats this weekend, and I'm watching sumo. The grand tournament that they have every 2 months, and this Ukrainian kid, I think Nishki is his handle, as a wrestler, like won the tournament, second tournament in a row. So it's pretty incredible, to see. There's been Mongolians that have been been big champions for years in sumo, but now we're starting to see, other countries.
Is the war between Russia and Ukraine, is there a wrestling front where there's just thousands of guys wrestling each other? And
I mean, there's a couple of them. There's a guy named Shishi, and then this other guy I mentioned. They're both Ukrainian. There are no Russian sumo wrestlers in the top ranks. It's like 100 in the top ranks out of like 10,000 or whatever overall. And I don't know of any Russians, at least. So I haven't seen like a grudge match like on that level yet. But I'm sure somewhere in the world there's some kind of like wrestling and other sports going on between those countries, officially or unofficially, and it can't be pretty.
Never knew you were you're a sumo fan. Gotta
Oh,
say.
really? Okay. You got to
I
look
mean,
more
how would
closely at some of my T-shirts. So it's like,
so? I mean, even if I did, I'm unfamiliar. I mean, the T-shirts we're signaling to
um,
others.
yeah,
You
it's
know?
I've been watching it for over 20 years. You know, since basically the sumo league in Japan started to you started to see Japan Public Broadcasting NHK um, put matches on YouTube basically, and then NHK.com their website is they started increasingly in the last couple decades putting more and more of their content up there in English, right? So and that's kind of helped drive the popularity of sumo in the U.S. Although it's not like it's got this massive fan base yet, but it is interesting, and I've learned a lot, including a lot of random Japanese terms.
Well,
You
I would
know,
love to. I would
like
love
yeah,
a Boston. There's got to be a Boston hipster sumo
there must
league.
be. I mean, we should look for it or have someone look for it. But tonight we're gonna to do kind of a cheap segue. It's funny we're kind of starting the conversation in a jovial way, but this is a very
Yeah,
grim topic we're going to be talking about to start with, at least tonight. I termed it on our little blurb tonight for the show. That we're going to discuss the Minneapolis crisis as it relates to Boston, and viewers may be like, well, how does it relate to Boston? And Chris and I would say, well, hopefully not directly, but there's a very clear series of links that we could certainly run through.
I mean,
Should
it's
be
just
pretty obvious.
yeah. I mean, I think this is just be a chance. Listen, to put on the record what we're thinking at this moment because it is
No,
extraordinary, and the fact that even to anyone who watches this now or later, the fact that Jason is conceding the extraordinary nature of it. I mean, you've seen even more. You've had your
no,
skull cracked open by at a couple of protests over the years, and I mean that
hmm
literally. I
I've
wouldn't
got
say
some
that
scars for
jokingly
sure.
because
Yeah,
I'm someone who deals with some trauma from these comparable or whatever similar injuries and experiences. Now, with that said, this is just absolutely different. With the federal authorities in there and almost like who's in charge. It's very much a war zone. I think I speak for a lot of people, and I never say that, but here I do, like, because I see people saying it, like all the thoughts we've always had, like, what is it like to live in a war zone? Or, we're pretty privileged, or yeah, this, and to see it. And I'll tell you, as bad as Minneapolis is, obviously we're going to mostly speak about that.
yeah,
Chicago a few months ago would really
yeah,
turn my stomach,
yeah,
and some of the imagery and just the places they're going. First of all, the fact that some of these downtrodden neighborhoods still look the way they do. We have them in Boston. I've, of course, reported on, places like the Bunker Hill projects where, now that they're being, taken down, there are still families in there, I believe, or at least there were when I was reporting there, and you wouldn't believe the conditions. So they're going to these places where people are already living in brutal conditions and
yeah,
brutalizing them on top of it. And
yeah,
Chicago, and then listening to the stories of, like, the one white person who lived in, who was remaining in a neighborhood, and just horrifying stuff about what happened to their neighbors, and people disappearing, rapture level shit. But of course now,
yeah,
not that was invisible, and I'm not here to give the big press any credit on this shit, because we
no,
frankly wouldn't be here if they had acted the way they should, and we can talk about that. But this is just, the fact that it's all anybody's talking about besides the Super Bowl, and certainly you and I will not be speaking much
we'll
about
not
the
be
Super
speaking
Bowl.
about that. Yeah,
But this is, I mean, but between this, I'll tell you, I'm glad to talk about some of our stuff we're working on, and we already have. But between the Super Bowl, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the snowstorm, I don't
yeah,
know what our. I'm glad that we're working with young journalists and training them, because it's
yeah.
kind of.
Right, they can
I
go
mean,
out.
people are reading, I guess, in a snowstorm. I know on the cannabis site, there were quite a few views. People are probably just sitting home reading. I don't, or at least scrolling. But man, this is one hell of a time to be a local reporter. It's like, what the hell do we do to.
Yeah, and I mean, one reason I want to talk about Minneapolis and stuff here tonight is because I honestly don't want to write about it this week. I have some, Boston and Massachusetts related stuff that I think would be important to write about. And I feel like I've been remiss in the last year or more, kind of writing more about national stuff and then housekeeping stuff. That's kind of my job in BINJ, is to write about, this is what we did in BINJ this week. Here's the money we need to raise, like blah, 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 that kind of stuff. But I haven't been doing what I used to do with my column, Apparent Horizon, where I would really, tend to dish it out to local politicians on their many discontents, shall we say, right? And this week, I do have something I'd like to write about a little bit involving Governor Healy, something I'm not, very happy with her about as regards, basically more giveaways to the utility companies in the guise of saving average people money. And, the coverage has not been great. The coverage has just kind of been buying, her spin on things, and therefore the utility companies spin on things. And I want to be like, no. So I won't talk about that right now. I want to write about it.
I'm glad you did, though, because I think a part of the conversation is, and I'm actually I'm doing a little column too about basically, mine will essentially say, listen, I get it. I'll link to this. I can't stop thinking about Minneapolis either. It is critical that we're all focused there. And let's also, but let's also keep track of these couple of issues.
Yes, and we shall.
And anything like this, because Democrats there's nothing Democrats can do wrong now. Can you imagine what it's going to take? Democrats going to have to. They're killing people in the street.
First of all, that that Mr. Chuck, in the Congress, is Schumer, is gonna totally bail on his promise to not fund ICE.
I'm not talking about nationally. I'm not talking about even our congressman. I'm talking about even just locally, our state politicians. It's all, hey, I'm a Democrat, and the joke, of course, is the amount of things they've screwed up. Their role in getting us to this juncture, votes for Department of Homeland Security. We could go on and on.
So you mean Massachusetts?
But I just mean in Massachusetts. We're gonna see a lot of it. Frankly, I don't want to detour onto cannabis thing right now, but you bet the people who are trying to ban cannabis in Massachusetts, they are Trumpies, legit, and I think that ought to be brought up. Just no, Trumpy, scream it in their face. And if I was a Democrat running for, and often, of course, Democrats run against Democrats here, so that's a different story. But if you're a Democrat defending your House seat in Massachusetts, or your state representative seat, you're against a Republican. You can do no wrong unless you're caught with your hand in the cookie jar.
That's right.
So.
Yeah, and that's never been our thing. Our thing has been to be journalists and to look at what people are actually doing, not just what they're saying, they're doing, and looking how it affects kind of regular people. And
by the way, Jason, the other thing is anything to hear about Healy and energy, because of course, anyone who watched the State of the Commonwealth the other day, there's 10 minutes, and she is really positioning herself, and I'm sure there are some decent things, but as the savior, 25% on energy bills, some new hydroelectric, which is providing some 25%. I don't know if that's what you're writing about. I'm not.
No, not about Hydro-Quebec, although I wrote against it 37 years ago, I believe.
All right, well, that might be time to update, to take another look.
Not for us, obviously, but for the Vanguard Press up in Burlington, Vermont, when I was writing for them, the Alt Weekly up there in I was writing for them in 1989 and 1990. So about that, I did an investigative piece on a deal that was then being made, with Quebec and between Vermont and Quebec, that was backing kind of the despoiling of native lands in the interest of sort of clean energy. And this is when they were still building the massive dams and stuff up there. Mm. And, you might say, but Jason, aren't you Mr. Environmentalist? And I'm like, yes, I am. That's why I understand that hydropower is not always clean, looked at in total, right? Looked at in terms of how big are these dams, and other things that have to be built to extract power from water. And whose land is it? that these things are being built on? What negative impact will it have on the environment? Is it worth it? Is the equation worth it? Are there other kinds of hydro, other kinds of clean energy that can be deployed? These are the kinds of things that I was looking at then. I'd look at now if I had more time. But yeah, I mean, before, maybe we can come back to that later in the show. But just on Minneapolis, people may have just heard Chris sort of say like he was kind of expecting me to kind of be dismissive of stuff.
Well, no, I wasn't like that. Just the fact.
No, I don't mean that in a super negative way. I just mean oftentimes when Chris and I talk, I'll be like, yes, this is serious, but not in the way the Democrats are positioning it or whatever. Like I'll have like a different view, and like you don't see me necessarily saying like the U.S. is fascist. Even now, you don't see me saying that. And, you may wonder why. And I'm like, well, look, I study a lot of history.
Fascists are organized.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. I mean, so there are things that one can say are, fascist happening, right? Certainly blowing away protesters who did nothing, right, at all. Nothing illegal, nothing wrong in any way, right, are getting wasted, by these jumped up mall cops. And, but my message is actually, as it has been when I've been writing on these matters in general, one of hope, right? One of, a guy who spent decades as a protester on the political left, I do believe, that what we're seeing in Minneapolis and Minnesota in general is a real, sort of majority pushback by an entire major city, an entire state, even a state which has a lot of conservatives, but also is famous as a left-wing state, right, in the last many decades.
Yeah.
It has, their Democrats are not like our Democrats. Their Democrats are the Farmer Labor Party, the Minnesota Farmer Labor Party, or Farm Labor Party, I forget which, like it's like a social democratic party or a democratic socialist party. Those things don't mean exactly the same thing, but
had unbelievable, from Jesse Ventura to, certainly
Al Franken, independent.
Al Franken would be a mainstream Democrat, but still just an interesting pick that not necessarily a state other than California would probably go for it. And of course Dennis Kucinich.
No, that's Ohio.
Of course. Sorry, my bad.
Right. But I'm trying to remember who you're thinking of, because the guy killed in an airplane crash or whatever was
wrong state. Oh yeah, that's right. My bad.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I know who you're thinking of. We got to look him up. So
but of course,
all right, we're gonna look him
up. He screamed a lot.
Minnesota. I apologize to everyone in Minnesota. We don't know the sub-number is.
No, I know. And Al Franken, of course, wound up in his seat.
Paul Wellstone.
Paul Wellstone.
Yes. Very interesting character. Definitely. And so, so what I'm saying is, like, we're ending up in a situation where, because basically Minneapolis and to some degree Minnesota itself rose up angry, about these sort of, how shall I put this? Fascist wannabe rent-a-cops in ICE, just crossing a whole bunch of lines at once. They'd already been crossing them in other places. There'd already been significant pushback in Chicago, in LA, as elsewhere. Chris was mentioning briefly earlier, right? But like this time, the wannabe fascists in the Trump administration, they took a few steps too far. And now they're being forced back, right? We're probably going to see ICE being pulled out, other DHS agencies like the Border Patrol being pulled out, because they really blew it. They had a situation where these rent-a-cops, these lobbers, these people like pretending to be government agents and police somehow wrapped in one, these hard right-wingers that want, these racists that just want to beat the shit out of people of color, and left-wingers, people that perceive as
background checks. It's a total fucking disaster. They don't have forces to go into all the cities they want, so they're just fronting, really. I mean, and they're bringing down
they murder people, right? And now, now white people, right? White middle class people, right? I mean, certainly many activists of color have pointed out already, like what you all are seeing happening and being concerned about justifiably is what's been happening to our communities, Black, Indigenous, other people of color communities, forever, right? This isn't new. Certainly to Native American communities, which Minnesota has quite a few of, for example, to immigrant communities in general, right? It's not particularly surprising for innocent people to be killed by the police, by government agents. This certainly has happened. But now, it was done, first of all, in the panopticon of contemporary social media. Like, you got 12 views of each killing, right? As a journalist, I have to say that, of course, as a person, I'm going to say murders. We've seen murders, right? Most recently now of this poor guy, Alex Preddy a few days ago. And then what do we have, right? We have top Trump officials. Trump himself is a little bit cagey, with this one, but you got that soulless automaton, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem with her cold, dead eyes, just like looking at the camera, lying through her fucking teeth, right? Like, in a way and about topics that even many right-wingers could not let go, including senators, right-wing senators, other folks, like all kinds of sort of Second Amendment activists, right? You got a person being called a domestic terrorist because he had a permitted pistol on his person in an open carry state, and he was nowhere near that weapon, right? He had a cell phone in his hand. He's trying to intervene as a legal observer. He's trying to, and he gets executed for this, right? It's very clear. There is no other way to look at this. None. And what do we have, Chris? What I just looked up a few of these things just for us. So, we have Kristi Noem saying Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts. We have, another sociopath, Stephen Miller, right? Another wannabe fascist, quite openly too. Another racist, right? And by the way, I mean, at least Kristi Noem is had a political office, like she was governor of South Dakota, which I know is like being governor of Oompa Loompa land, but I mean, okay, she at least, had that kind of responsibility. Miller, I don't even know what Miller's deal is, but there he is, Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security. He describes Preddy as a domestic terrorist who tried to assassinate federal law enforcement. We've got Kash Patel, a person who's LARPing as a cop. He's a blogger who becomes the head of the FBI for no particular reason, right? Claims Preddy was trying to attack, in quotes, law enforcement, implied wrongdoing tied to bringing weapons there. And then, of course, we've got Gregory Bovino, and this is an interesting character, right? The Border Patrol commander at the Minneapolis scene, saying it looks like Preddy wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. So now, they say this stuff and it drops like a lead balloon, right? And you have the spectacle of, I guess we can call these news readers on Sunday TV, these talk shows, these people that kind of pretend to be journalists, actually acting like journalists for a change and going, sorry, Kristi Noem, sorry, everybody, who's on these shows on the weekend. Like, everyone is seeing this murder. Like, what are you talking about?
These are the objectivity people, and it's hilarious. It's ridiculous because they should be acting no differently today than they were yesterday or the day before, and calling bullshit on bullshit, just like the way we do, even with politicians we like in Massachusetts or nationally speaking or whatever. And they don't do it, and that goes for both sides. I think that this thing we're just with everybody so convinced that the media is, with leftists so convinced that the media is so right wing and vice versa. The reality that they're just completely asleep at the wheel and not doing the basics and just following, reading press releases and spinning the wheel. That's
and
really
sucking up to wealth and power. That's usually what they do.
And Trump is all that shit. But some of the things,
Now Trump is making some kind of deal with Governor Walz. Like, it's kind of, there's been some big articles, notably Wall Street Journal this morning, talking about how the kind of Noam Patel and other people faction in Trump's cabinet are being pushed back on this stuff. So now you're seeing Bovino being demoted, being sent back where he came from in California or whatever it was with the Border Patrol. He's going to retire soon, conveniently. And Tom Homan, who's like, definitely an evil person himself, definitely a racist, definitely a nativist and anti-immigrant person. Now he's in charge. He's supposed to be the nice guy as regards, ICE and stuff. So Trump has put him directly in charge in Minnesota. We'll see how that goes. But, the Trump forces are sort of realigning. They're backing off. And it's looking very much to me, certainly, like a lot of this had to do with a popular uprising, and a very peaceful one, considering everything. Considering that we have to, you and I, certainly, Chris, have to watch our friends in the Democratic Party, especially around here, talking tough and, saying, yeah, we're all going to get guns and we're going to, like, yeah, you want to just kind of calm down about that, folks. Like, I don't think anyone wants a civil war. That is never, even like a civil conflict involving weapons and stuff. That is not what is required here. What is required, I mean, much as I dislike the Democrats just at the federal level as a party, they are in position, if they don't completely screw it up, to win some seats, to take control of one or both houses of Congress in the fall, and, to start to really push back on this administration. And then, journalists like us can get back to the business of criticizing the Democrats for being suck-ups to wealth and power. But
you got to think, what is the fucking plan? I mean, this is, if Minneapolis is a testing ground for what? They're going to go to fucking Chicago, New York, going to take over every city.
Boston. Okay, that's what we're supposed to be getting at, Chris. Like, here we are in Boston.
Go for Boston. I think one thing that I got to slip in, while we're here, is that we cannot pretend that the technology, the surveillance, and so-called national security technology being deployed in Minneapolis is not already here. Whether it's Lenco, these land tanks that are actually manufactured in Massachusetts, to drones, which I think, honestly, I've been kind of chest pounding to see some of our drone coverage getting clicked because of the way it's coming up in Minneapolis, which is where basically one of the hottest technologies in so-called security and surveillance is anti-drone technology. And there's one in particular, one technology called D-drone, D-E-D-R-O-N-E. We wrote about it last year, that Massachusetts had a request for proposal out, so they have that now. I believe the state police. And what that does is it definitely, at the very least, works with DJI, which is the majority of drones are made by this one manufacturer.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. It could actually allow a police department to tell not only where a drone is, but where it came from, who's operating it. And I'll add on top of this that there used to be guardrails to where you could fly drones. The FAA used to say you can't put them near airports, stuff like that. Those rules still apply, and we've written about this as well, but the guardrails aren't there. So the app will no longer tell you if you're at a protest, say where Occupy Boston was, down by Dewey Square. Yeah. My guess is if drones were around, well, they were, but not to the degree where I think
not like now,
where you may not be able to fly it because of some of the train tracks that are there. Also, of course, the Federal Reserve building, literally across Atlantic Avenue. So yeah. I think people really need to pay attention. It's interesting because I pay attention. Obviously, I cover surveillance and these issues. So I have been watching, maybe my feeds are sending me stuff about the deployment of these technologies in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But then when I hear other reporters or, listen to media shows, what they're saying is that it's not being covered nearly enough. And another technology that BINJ has written about, and there's different names for it and stuff, but of course is the is it what do I want to say? What I want to say, I almost said, is it the Stingray? The dirt
I
bot?
remember the Stingray from like Occupied days and stuff like
Well,
that.
yeah. So this is basically,
They take over or jam cell phone networks.
yeah, they basically it turns into its own cell phone. So
Yeah.
it like replicates a tower. Okay, and
So it can capture people's information and
captures all
conversations
the
and whatever.
information. And this is,
Yeah.
of course, like the most like deliberate Fourth Amendment violation imaginable, because
Yeah.
like we in our reporting on this, we use the example of like driving through a parking lot at Foxborough Stadium where there's like a football game going on. There's our football tie-in for the week, folks, and it'll pick up every single, they're looking for one person, but it picks up literally, like, imagine a magnet and it's a full of paper clips, and it just picks up every single one. So these are the things that I keep saying, there's only so much we can do. I have like one of those headlamps with the hit thing. I have my flak jacket if I need it, and I have, like, if I can only be so physically prepared for shit to hit the fan here. The truth is, I'm not going to go out with a lot of other reporters. It'll be a couple of us, those with experience, and I cannot be responsible for others. I'll have other people working from windows and doing the stuff at home. As for preparation ahead of time, what the hell do we know? I think the preparation is what we've always done. Know what the technologies are, know what to look for. If you're out there now, if you plan on going to protest, listen, I don't even know what to tell people. That's not my job. You probably have more advice on that front. But if you're going
I
to be out
wasn't going to
there,
get that granular yet, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
one thing people can do is look for what's out there. So what little things are you seeing? So even if it's like, so-called benevolent operators like cops who may be defending people, it's so crazy the point we're at, against ICE officers. Even what do they have? Whose cameras are turned on? Who has body cameras on? We keep hearing they have body cameras. They don't. Well, we shouldn't always. And I'm not like, I swear, I hate to sound. This is the way I talk. I'm not like chastising anybody, but I will say we shouldn't always only be looking for body camera footage when shit happens. We should be actually randomly, especially when shit like this is going on. If there's a situation where like cops are talking to ICE officers and you can't see that, that's a great example of maybe what a video camera surveillance footage we can get. So think about these things. Where, if there's like a place, like I'd say like a Revere or Everett, these places where ICE has already been terrorizing people, we really got to get familiar with those. And this is me thinking out loud, speaking to myself. What we really should be familiar with our information requests in those municipalities, stuff like that. Getting in with the RAOs, the record access officers, and being able to act. Because when shit hits the fan, I mean, can you even imagine the backlogs and what it's like trying to get any information in Minneapolis right now? It's literally a fucking city under siege. I'm not. So, preparation.
There's 3,000, like DHS agents from various places and others too, other agencies as well. And then there's like 600 regular Minneapolis cops. I never thought I would feel at all sympathetic for the Minneapolis cops, by the way, having dealt with them directly as a protester when I was younger. But
anything west of the Mississippi is another fucking ballgame altogether. I learned that when I was covering Occupy. But I think it's just, this the whole thing though. All I'm saying on the short of that is I have my boots, I got my gloves, I got my pen, I don't know, I got my charger. I can only be so physically prepared. I think I know that's the instinct. Maybe I'm just projecting here, but I can't be the only one thinking like this. But I realized over the past couple week, especially, I need to have kind of that clarity of what am I going to do if I go out there as a reporter. I'm not a long range photographer. I don't know.
The first question I wanted to get at was sort of like, people are like, well, what if they come to Boston? And I mean, I guess we can right away say they're already here, right? They've been here. We had some prominent, kind of ugly kidnappings and stuff we've talked about before, like Rumeza Ozturk in particular over at Tufts, who was fortunately released finally from some hellhole in Louisiana where they'd absconded with her. But So they're here. They're and by the way, so this guy Holman, right, who's now being put in charge of the Minneapolis scene by Trump, he's the architect of all this, like, let's hunt down the criminals wherever they are, criminal immigrants, and go get them and do these flashy busts and have dudes in masks. And like, he's like the architect or a major architect of that, right?
Him in every shitty movie, every fucking,
So, that's ongoing, right? And our, local cops and stuff generally are not participating, helping them out officially. Although I know in Worcester and elsewhere, there's already been some shenanigans, where local reporters and others, people we know, have already, I think, outed some local cops working, directly with ICE when they shouldn't be, right?
For sure. And New York City is going to have this trouble too, because they have, you have God knows how many cops who left because of the socialist mayor and are now working for ICE. And so you have now, real crossover, which is definitely terrifying. And, but let's I think that I think back to Democrats going to be Democrats. It's one of those things. How many people out there think that, murderers shouldn't be put in jail? It's just
that there shouldn't be law enforcement for this kind of stuff. Exactly, right?
So ultimately, nobody ever disagreed about this. Like almost everyone but the craziest liberal, like progressive,
some anarchists, Chris, and radical, a few others,
whatever, thinks that people who stab people in the street should be fucking arrested, deported.
Be given a hug and some cocoa and some jammies to put on.
Right. Nobody ever thought that. So since nobody ever thought that, the real difference of opinion was obviously what should be done with /2 people who we don't like, who don't look like us, who may not have a criminal record on. It was literally always that was always the only fucking thing that anybody was ever talking about, because we all always agreed that dangerous criminals shouldn't be endangering the public. So it's like we're back to square one here, only we've of course seen the repercussions of pretending that there was ever a discrepancy in belief.
So the question has to be, right, are they going are the feds going to invade Boston the way they've invaded some other cities? And even when you and I spoke a couple of weeks ago on air, I believe we were I was saying some nice things about mass Democrats for being, pretty reasonable about stuff like this. And certainly Mayor Wu and Governor Healy continue to be pretty good when talking about stuff like Minneapolis
whatsoever.
Right. They won't work with ICE, and stuff like that. That's all fine. And they've also been pretty smart, and they've seemingly made some deals with the feds that have been working, and we have not seen an attempt to invade us. It's also become patently obvious, even to a lot of Republicans, that there are, in terms of like immigrants who happen to be criminals, there's a hell of a lot more of them down in a lot of red states like Florida and Texas, than there are in the states that have been invaded. And why are they harassing us? And of course, the reason is, this can be read as an entering wedge for actual fascism. The old Pastor Niemöller, sort of thing. First they came for the immigrants and I did nothing. Then they came for the Jews. Then they, talking about the Nazis, right? And there is some of that. Like, certainly there are people in government, that listen to the darker, uglier corners of the right-wing internet to this day, even as major government officials, and, dream about stuff like the night of the rope or whatever their fucking fantasies are. And they do think, if we can get away with sending all these ICE people and Border Patrol people and whatever, tobacco, alcohol, and firearms people over here to places like Minneapolis, to fuck shit up, scare the hell out of liberals and everyone we hate, and certainly people that are black, brown, and whatever, that aren't, white people like us, which is kind of funny because the hard right is pretty multiracial these days.
It also scares everybody, man.
Right. So scare everybody. So if they can get away with it and, keep doing it, then we might indeed see, a lot more nice white middle class people getting offed for no reason. But what's interesting to me is, apropos of the technology you were bringing up, Chris, there's been really great use of available technology by regular protest groups. And, the hard right likes to sputter that this is all Antifa, this massive conspiracy. And it's like, no, it's people using available technology to figure out where ICE is, like what hotels they're staying in, and then basically engage in perfectly legal psychological warfare against them, right? Blowing whistles all night, banging drums all night, following them around, getting restaurants and getting 7-Elevens to put up signs saying, no ICE here. We don't want your business. We don't want your custom. Get the fuck out of town.
All of which are significant acts of bravery being asked of on a fucking public by basically Democrats who are the opposite. And it's terrible and terrifying. And as someone who stopped giving a shit about my body and bank account and all of the above years ago for all of these causes, but not to the extent of some people, but more than most of the population.
You've taken risks. Yeah.
It's striking to watch, and it is humbling to watch. And I hate to say that I know I would be out there and will be if it gets to the extent in Boston, but I will be. And I just, when I see people out, and it's fucking cold, man, having covered a lot of stuff in the cold.
Oh, me too.
I hope people realize, and it's just, there's so much to it. There's so much to protests that we don't get to see on TV, and we can't just, I don't unless you live in like, the room in Sharon Stone's Sliver where you have 35 televisions. You can't be watching always every live stream angle of everything, but around that next corner and around that next corner, there's another terrified family. There's another person who is fighting. The other thing is about a thing like this is like generational trauma for fucking hundreds of thousands of people. That whole area will never be the same. It's just crazy. And I think that you look at Minneapolis. If you're in Boston, you got to see a comparable situation geographically.
And you have to understand
Cambridge is St. Paul, right? I mean, I see all these kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, once this stuff gets going, though, there's going to be casualties, right? I'm not glad about any of it, but I am glad that we're talking about a few deaths, certainly relative to the population, not large numbers of deaths by by military, personnel, by different kinds of other federal agents and stuff. Like, I think protest is working. I think, we're going to see more of it. And I know that there's been caches of data on the exact identities and backgrounds of thousands of ICE agents are out there now. This is not like just an uneven fight at this point. Yeah. And clearly a lot of government officials themselves, irrespective of their party, are trying to help out these protests. Yeah. That's been patently obvious, right? So I think if we can forestall it from coming to Boston, great. But my overall question is not so much that I'm concerned that we might not push back the Republicans at the federal level, because I think that that's on the way now, right? I think there's a good chance of that happening in the midterms and beyond. And I'm not like just, before people on, further on the left are like going, oh, just a reformist. Oh, you just want to do everything by the books in these rigged elections. Yeah, I mean, no, right? I'm just trying to be a realist, right? So there's going to be hopefully elections. We're going to see that the Republicans pushed further back on their heels. I mean, and this kind of stuff isn't the only dumb thing they're doing, is it? But my overall concern is, should the Democrats get power again, okay, there's still craven servants at the federal level of the same billionaires. So are we going to see these same kind of protests against them? That's what I want to know. Well, are we going to see talk of general strikes? Okay. Are we going to see people actually moving to make this country more democratic, better for regular people? That's what I'm curious about, Chris.
Of course not, because right now it's all that momentum is going to come from the corporate sector, which is the only lever with any meaning in this country. And they're only upset now because their bottom line, they're all fucked up because
it's interfering with their bottom line at some level.
Everything from tariffs to to people. Right. I got rid of some silver recently because it's $100 an ounce. $100 an ounce. Highest since the early
5,100, I believe, Chris.
What?
Gold is $5,100 an ounce.
Silver,
I
I
can
said.
check.
Silver.
Oh,
I don't
silver.
know.
Pardon me, folks. Pardon me. You're
I
right.
have no gold. I have no gold. Sorry, but I think
Yeah, if
gold. I'm
I
sure
happen to
is
be a
up too.
tiny piece of
I don't
gold.
mess around in that. That's above my pay grade. But my point is that that's
Oh,
why
you speculating in metals, Chris? Are you prepared for the end
capitalism.
times?
I just happen to have some points. Capitalism will always rule. That's what runs the show, and that is why Trump, ironically, the symbol of capitalist cosplayer, the perhaps the greatest of all time, is going to tank this all because he's bad at fucking capitalism, and people are losing money, and that's what the Democrats have always. Are you kidding? What do you think they're doing when they're not out making statements and helping in Minneapolis? They are
Right.
literally going to. I mean, General Mills, like all the big
Yeah.
Minnesota-based companies put a statement out like this week. I've never seen people laugh harder on the internet. Other than maybe Donald Trump's peace commission with fucking Netanyahu and Vladimir Putin on it. Other than that, that was the biggest laughing stock of the past week. Was clearly that this is what you guys lose. You sell one less box of cereal, General Mills, and now there's a problem. Just total. But I'm sure it's not. So I'm sure it's not novel. Just to say that. But yeah, that's the only reason that he's going to be that's the end of it.
So I would just tell people in Massachusetts, I mean, we could still see some kind of, quote unquote invasion by federal agents and stuff in any city or town in Massachusetts, especially Boston. Just be prepared to use your very much still existing constitutional rights. It's, as I keep saying, it's a use them or lose them situation. People have been using them. You should use them too. Get out in the streets at the drop of a dime. Say, we don't want this bullshit. We don't want you all hunting down immigrants or anybody else for any reason. It's just not right. It's not constitutional. Immigrants have rights too under the Constitution, and you got to cut this shit out, or we're going to push back. We're going to push back. We're going to push back. Right. And that pushing back is going to start to involve companies based in states that are getting hassled. Right. It is going to involve rich people that normally wouldn't care. It will certainly involve mainstream politicians from both parties. And I don't think that the Republicans at the federal level can stand that kind of heat. I think that they're just stepping on too many toes, too haphazardly. They are starting to back off in some areas. We're going to see them back off in others too. And then we're going to see if we can have any kind of clean election in the midterms. And we're going to see where they're at, come mid-November of this year, right? And you and I can talk about this stuff again. But I don't think we're going to see a Boston invasion like we're seeing in Minneapolis or some of the other cities. I think that Trump and his crew are going to be trying to come up with some new playbook, and hopefully they're going to screw that up too and back off that too.
Yeah, well, I guess to be continued, because I mean it does bring up the issue then of, is it more the Obama method that secret terrorism, and or really just to have a presence like they currently do in Boston, where it's not on the news every day? Because
That's
honestly, when they first got, they were fucking at a much smaller scale, way more brutal. And we would have obviously want to have somebody from an organization dealing with the people suffering from this firsthand, but cutting the seatbelts. We should have Sarah Betancourt. We should have on actually.
We should,
because she hears a lot of these stories, but they're certainly fewer and far between. And I'm going to say something that us progressives hate to say. A lot of the times when we don't hear about it, it is because even the people in that community are fucking happy to see a person gone. And unfortunately, that's just so rare. It's not like that is what I don't want to give a fake percentage. I'm not the president, but sure, there are situations where ICE goes in, removes somebody with a violent warrant. Not always here.
Absolutely.
And by the way, that's one thing I think a lot of people don't understand, and that I also think leads to a lot of bullshit and false arrests, which is, there is and it's a valid argument in some regards. Why can't police deal with someone who has a violent warrant? And the answer is because if it's from Honduras, that is not something that the local police are going to proactively deal with some extenuating circumstances, and of course, and war. But for the most part, yeah, that's all, what maybe something ICE can do. But you know what? They don't get to now. It's over. Nope, no, you don't. Everybody's proven that it's all bullshit and never meant anything from the get-go, and they never cared, and they just wanted to terrorize black and brown communities.
And the billionaires who back both major parties want nothing but cheap labor. They want to discipline American citizens in our jobs by making sure there's always what's called the reserve army of labor, right, in economics, and certainly left-wing economics. Right. So that immigrants are a reserve army. They're millions of people that can be paid less and treated badly and thrown out of the country at any time. Like when they try to do something like unionize, someone will drop a dime on that particular factory or farm, and a bunch of people who were union leaders will be rousted and thrown out of the country, right? But otherwise, you're not seeing ICE touching most of the millions of immigrants that are currently in the U.S., without documents or what have you at all, because the billionaires still want to be billionaires. And one way they're billionaires is by exploiting the labor of immigrants and using those immigrants, as a gun pointed at the livelihoods of people that are citizens or have green cards, here in the U.S. by keeping wages down. That's what it's all about for these people. So, I mean, this is one reason why we have to make common cause. Citizens must make common cause with immigrants, must work together and be like, we're all human beings. We're all trying to have a decent life. Our enemies are the same very wealthy people that are trying to exploit all of us to one degree or another. I'm not saying everyone's exploited the same way, right? But if we work together, we can build a better society that's more democratic for everybody. So all done for the week, I think. I talk about what we're writing about. When we write about it, I'd rather just write what I want to write this week if I have time.
Go for it, man.
We can talk about it later. But
cool. Let's do it.
Nice chatting about this stuff, and thanks everyone for watching. We'll be back, I think, for sure this time next week, unless I do get a cold, in which case it might just be Chris. I don't know. Next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Here on our BINJ News YouTube channel. So